Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another pickup building tutorial. In this video it's the turn of humbucker size P90s, and if you've got any questions about the rationale behind the design of this pickup, then I've already shot a video. I'll have the link in the description below so you can check that out, and hopefully that should answer any questions you have about it. This video is going to be a humbucker size P90 built using one of my humbucker size P90 Real P90 bobbins. And all of this stuff you can buy in a kit from my website. It also includes screws and mounting springs, but that's not part of the build process, so that won't be included in this video. And here are our parts. We have two bar magnets, the metal spacer that go between the bar magnets, our cover, our base plate, our bobbin here, our pole screws, and we have the output lead here as well. And here's the first step. This is a step that you won't actually have to do, but I thought it would be good to include it just in case you're curious of how the bobbins are made. They're 3D printed, like so. It takes a very long time to print them, probably about 2 hours for each bobbin. So you wait and the machine slowly prints it out. Of course we sell these pre-prepared for you, so you don't need a 3D printer or any of the programming such as this. But, as I say, I think it was worth putting it in there just to give you an idea of how the whole build works. And after the 3D printing process, this is the bobbin we're left with. Now, this is where all the support material was. Obviously it has to have support material on top of this to build this. It can't just print in thin air, sadly. So what I've done is I've removed the support material, and then you're always left with a few spiky bits around the edge. So I've just cleaned that up, so now it's not dead smooth, but it's smooth enough to work with. Now, if it's too spiky, then the wire gets caught in it as it's being wound. So that's essentially our bobbin there, which in the other video I discussed about why it's like this. You will always get a bobbin if you purchase my kit to be in this windable condition, so I deal with all the removing of the support material. So it should be good to go. I've literally just added this to complete the video, I suppose, because it's not really of any use to you if you're purchasing the kit. And now the bobbin's ready for winding. So what I'm going to do is, well, what I've already done is I've stuck it onto the winding machine, and I'm going to look for the flattened corner on the bottom of the bobbin here, and what I want to do is I want to thread the wire over that and then stick that, and I'm leaving myself about 10 centimeters spare. Just stick that on the bottom so it doesn't flap around and get stuck in the coil, and then I'm just going to start the coil off by hand by putting that over that little bit there, and then from there I can wind it properly. And I'm going to wind this with about 10,000 winds of 42 gauge wire. That's round about normal for a typical P90. You can go higher if you want a higher output, you can go lower if you want a lower output. And now that the coil is wound, what we need to do is we need to tape around it all to protect it. So what we need to do when we're doing this is we need to find the wire end, and we need to make sure that we know where the wire start and the wire end is as well, because that becomes important when we're using two of them. And if, for instance, we want a middle position with both neck and bridge pickup active at the same time, and we want that noiseless, being reverse wound, reverse polarity, then we need to know where the start and the end are, so that we can switch the the output leads the ground and the hot, dependent on that, or if we're going for the vintage accurate type of not having that. So I've pulled the end just off the side here, probably not picked up on the wire there, on the camera even. There we go, there it is. And then I'm just going to use the tape and cover all of the exposed wire. And as this is a tool coil here, it's going to take quite a few wraps to do that. So now the whole of the coil is covered and you can't see any exposed wire. So now we've covered the coil with tape, what we want to do is we need to remove the tape from the underside here, which was holding the wire start, doing that carefully not to break it. And of course, it being tape, it does stick quite a lot, so you need to be careful. Usually if you grab it from the side where it's held in the bobbin itself, then you don't put any pressure on the bobbin itself, or where the wire comes out of the bobbin. And then now I've got two exposed wires from it. Of course, from the stage before, I know which is which. This is the coil start, this is the coil end. Of course, I've just taken the tape that was holding it on the bobbin off. So if you do forget at that stage, then you know if you've got it taped down, then it's the coil start. So now I'm using yellow and black. Yellow for the coil start. And what I'm doing is I've just stripped back a bit of the insulation from each end, and just spinning the or coiling the wire around the exposed ends. Yellow for the start and black for the end. And so now I've got about 10 winds of wire around the end of each output lead. Now they need to be soldered. So what I'm going to do to solder these on is I'm just going to give them a quick soldering with a little bit of solder on each, and about 10 seconds or so on each. Sometimes it can be good to apply a bit of pressure just to scrape off any insulation. Some are more solderable than others. And at this stage we want to test the figure to see if the solder connections are good, because the next stage is going to be to stick them down and put them out of reach. So what I'm going to do is just read the resistance across the two. So we've got 7.8k there, which is just about right for a P90, so that's perfect. So now that those are both soldered on there and we've got a good electrical connection, I can pull off the wires off the other end now, as those are now excess, and that just neatens it all up and means there's less confusion. And here comes the key point when we're doing this. Now we've got a flattened corner over here, and that's because when the cover's over, then it sits against these bits apart from there, whereas it would sort of bow out around it. So that is leaving space for these wires to come out the underside. So what we want to do is we want to stick these somewhere where they can come out there, like so. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lay it flat against here. I'm going to take a small piece of tape, put it there. Now, of course, it doesn't matter if they don't sit in exactly the right place. When we come to cover it, then we can put it exactly where it should be. But you want it so that you have at least, say, 3-4 centimeters out the end, and then that'll give us enough wire to work with. So the only key thing to think about here is that you don't want the exposed parts of the lead ends here, being the outside of them, touching, because obviously that's going to short your coil, and then you're going to get a pickup that doesn't work. But as long as you do one at a time and you tape them between, then you shouldn't get any of that. But we can test that with the multimeter after we're done, just to make sure there's not any issues with that. Then after that, I'm just going in with another long piece of tape here, covering all the wire as I go. And then this just holds the whole thing together. So now we don't really care which is which from sight, because we know black and white, black and yellow even. So it doesn't matter which way up anything goes, or there's not going to be any confusion over which is the coil end and coil start at this point. Get the multimeter in the shot. Hopefully we're going to see 7.8K again. Okay, it's gone up slightly since the last time, but it's not 0, which is what I was checking for. So that means the pickup's working correctly, and we're good to go on to the next stage now. So now that we've covered the whole coil, we are good to put in the pole screws. So this is a pretty basic process, going one by one. Our next stage now is to start preparing the final pieces for assembly. So I'm going to start with the cover, and covers usually are connected here and here onto the base plate. The base plate going in there. So the problem with that usually is that this plating on here does not solder very well. So what I want to do is I want to remove the plating, which I've just got a file here. I'm just going to file off a little bit of the plating. On both sides, and I don't know if that's going to come out here, but yeah, there we go. You can see that the plating's come off, and you can see the nickel silver underneath there. So once you can see a different colour coming through, then you know you're through. It's not very thick plating, so it doesn't take a lot of work. So now that I've done both of those, that's the cover prepared. So the next stage now is to sort out the bobbin onto the base plate and all the connections. So what I'm doing is I'm threading the wire through the centre hole on the base plate here. And I'm probably going to use about that much, about 5 centimeters in the pickup itself. So I'm just going to hook that over, and I'm going to be wiring up the connections on this side here. So I need the bobbin to be this side on it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip that over here, and before I start messing around with everything, I can hook up the ground connection onto the base plate this way up, which makes it a lot easier. So this is going to be black for ground, and if I was doing an RWRP set, then I would know that this is black ground, and then the cable on the output wire is going to be connected to yellow. if it was RWP, then on the other pickup, then I'll be doing them the other way around. So it'd be yellow to the base plate and then black to the output cable. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to connect this up in the side over here. You might need to lift the base plate to get a good connection there. Even that's not doing it, so I'm going to bend it slightly. There we go. Tug on that and it's not going free. So that means that connection is good now. So what we do now is we would flip it over, but before we do that, of course we need the magnetic assembly underneath the bobbin between the base plate. So we'll start with the metal spacer, and going back to the RWRP point, the P being reverse polarity, so we need to think about the magnetism, which is of course where the magnets come in. So if we're doing RWP, that means we need opposites. So I'm doing a neck pickup here, which typically for my pickups is north. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to test either side. Our P90s always have opposing forces, so for instance if that's north side, then I want the north of this side to be towards it as well. Now they will start to, okay, that's attracted straight away, which means this is the south side. If it attracts from a long way away, that means it's the wrong way around. If it starts repelling, then once you get a bit closer, then it gets to the metal spacer and then sticks itself, or spins around. There we go, see? Sort of repelling and pushing it away and spinning it around. And then once it gets close enough, it sticks. So that's how you know that they're the correct way around. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my compass and put it to the top. If it points towards it, then I know it's south. And that is pointing towards it, so that's south, so it's the wrong way around. So I'm going to flip both magnets. Again, it's going to repel and stick once it's close. So now I've got the magnetic assembly correct. I can now put the base plate on the bottom here. And it's quite a tall pickup, so it doesn't go through too much. And now that I've already threaded the wire through, then I've got everything where I need it to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull back the braid now. To pull back the cloth from the inner wire. And now all I've got to do is connect these two here. I'm going to start with a bit of solder on either. And once that's done, then I just need to solder them together. Now it's at this point where we can pull this a bit further and start working out where the wires are all going to go. So again, with the flat corner here, we're going to be threading everything through there. So that's going to be where the cover doesn't contact the side of the bobbin. We want all that through the corner there. Now, the braid of the wire here needs to make an electrical connection with the base plate. So that can be soldered here, it can be soldered pretty much anywhere. I like to do it over here. This is the easiest place to do it. got a magnet falling out there, so just push that magnet back into place. And now we can check all the connections and see if we've connected the output lead correctly. Again, I'm expecting 7.8 or 7.9 or somewhere thereabouts. Perfect. So that means all the connections are correct. So what I need to do now is, obviously I don't want the end here flapping about because the cover, as it's soldered onto the base plate, forms part of the ground side. So if that were to touch, then it would short it all out. So you can use a bit of heat shrink, you can tape over it, you can do this in a variety of ways, but my personal favourite way to do this is just to grab another bit of tape and give it another once over around the edge. And now we've got the whole coil done. We've got it all connected up to the base plate. Now we just want to make sure the magnets are in the right place. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to centre them so that if you're looking from the side, then there's the end of it. I want that end to be sort of the same distance from there as this end being the other end of the magnet from there, so they're sort of centred. And then after that, it is a simple case of, and actually this is probably a good point to look for any, oh actually I've got a tiny bit of exposed wire there, because the side of the pickup makes a physical connection with this. So even if you do have insulated coil wire, if you have a physical connection, the friction between them can pull off a bit of the insulation and cause grounding issues, shorting the pickup. So this is your last chance to cover over any stray bits of wire that you may have, and I've got one tiny bit. I don't think the camera's going to put it, see it just off the side here, so I'm just going to, it probably wouldn't cause an issue, but it's always much better to tape it up at this point, because it can read fine and then break down over time and cause further issues in the future. So now this is pretty stuffed into here, so this is not an easy job. I am going to generally start with one side and push it out slightly to get the other side in. And there we go. You might want to push in the wire here slightly to help it. And as it's quite a tall pickup, I think that's about as far as it goes. So now we can do the final solder connections for the cover, although at this point it's probably best to test it once more. As I was saying, the wire can sometimes go around against the cover of the pickup, so you want to test this as much as possible once you get the ground ground cover connections on there, then it becomes a nightmare to then remove those, take the pickup out, and then sort out what the issue is. If you can diagnose the problem at this stage, then it's much easier. So yeah, I'm still getting actually that's not quite in the shot. I am getting a connection of a resistance even of 7.9 again. So that means everything's good at this stage. I will test it once more, once the solder connection is made, just in case the cover's not touching the base plate and not actually showing any issues. Very simple. Just getting the soldering iron down the side there, where we've taken off the plating off the side. So now I can give the pickup one last test, now that all the connections are in. And I am looking for that resistance of about 7.9 again. And that works. So that means there's no shorting in the pickup and everything works correctly. So now we need to prepare it for wax spotting, and because these use 3D printed bobbins, they do tend to slightly bend in the wax. So what I want to do is I want to pull the pole screws up a little bit, and I want to make sure that they're poking through the cover, because the pressure of the windings on the bobbin itself causes it to bow upwards, and as it does that, then these screws get closer together, and if they're poking through the cover, that cover holds them in place. So that means that the bobbin's not going to warp at all, which is only a small amount, but if you have these screws underneath, I've found that it can pull those closer together so that the pole spacing is even closer, and then you can't actually lift them or screw them outwards because they don't actually align with the holes of the cover. So that is just an unnecessary issue. If we can screw them upwards slightly at this stage and solve that. And now the final step is just to wax pot the pickup, and that's just going to go in the wax over here. And that's going to be submerged in wax of 53 centigrade, and that's going to be for about 15 minutes until the bubbles stop coming out of it. And after all that, you should have a pickup that looks something like this.